Dear colleagues, good afternoon. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation and being with us today. I'd like to extend my gratitude to those who've joined and following our event online. You know that every year on the 24th of April we announce the heroes of Aurora, and the tradition continues this year. And today we are going to know all together who are those heroes going to be for 2022. And by that time I'd like to present some housekeeping information and format related data. We are going to be hosting Mr. Nubar Afeyan, Mr. Ruben Vartanyan, and the chairman of the selection committee, Lord Ara Darzi. Also, the director of Aurora, Armand Gilavian, is with us today. Now, a little bit about the format. You must know that this format does not mean that you cannot ask questions, dear journalists. After the main presentation speeches, you will have the opportunity to ask your questions during a Q&A, of course, to the chairman of the selection committee and co-founders of Aurora. And I'd like to give the floor now to Armand Gilavian, the director of Aurora Humanitarian Initiative. Please. Thank you, Zoya. My warmest greetings, dear friends. I'm very glad to see you all in Mahinor, the day of commemoration of the victims of Armenian genocide, a very important day for Armenia, for the world, and of course for Aurora Humanitarian Initiative. First of all, I'd like to thank Mahinor, represented by the director, Vahan Terrevondian. It's been several years since we've been in cooperation with the Center of Humanity, and we're very grateful for that cooperation to Mr. Revondian and his team.
Today we went to Tsernakabert to commemorate those who perished during the Armenian genocide in 1915-1923 and express our gratitude to those who helped the persecuted to survive. There is always two aspects of this day. We are remembering the victims of the genocide, and we are also announcing the names of the Aurora Humanitarians in Mahinor in honor of those who saved Armenians more than a century ago. Aurora was founded on behalf of the survivors of the Armenian genocide and in gratitude to their savers. And these modern-day heroes are the continuation of this tradition and its embodiment. Last year, as you know, we lost Aurora co-founder Vartan Gregorian, Aurora Prize Selection Committee member and president of Carnegie Corporation of New York. On April 13, to pay tribute to his memory and honor his legacy, the Aurora Humanitarian Initiative joined the memorial service organized by the members of his family, his colleagues, and Carnegie Corporation. It was quite emotional, as members of the Gregorian family, his lifelong friends, and distinguished colleagues shared memories of him and remembered his teachings. Let us watch now a recording of Aurora Humanitarian Initiative co-founder Nubar Afeyan's speech at this very important event.
Well, I have good news and bad news. The good news is I'm the last speaker before the benediction. The bad news is that this wonderful ceremony is going to come to a close, and I wish it could go on and on. I've had the occasion to give many an address in Vartan's presence over the last decade when we worked together on the Aurora Prize initiative. And I would typically sit next to him just before going up on stage. And he would lean over and tell me something just before I went on. Today was the first time I don't have that opportunity, but I have to tell you that his presence was here. And he, in my mind, told me, don't be so serious. Start with something humorous. So I'm not going to start with my written comments. Let me just recount one story, as many others have, that to me animates, embodies Vartan. It was 2009, and the then president of Armenia was visiting New York City to meet with community leaders from all over the United States who were Armenian Americans. And Vartan, of course, was one of the main hosts. And I was invited, and I came down from Boston. Given the topic of the geopolitics of the region, I also stopped by at Yale University, where my oldest daughter was studying political science, and I brought her with me. We were at this grand hall in New York. I was trying to recall the hotel, and just as I entered, Vartan was there. We knew each other already for many years, and I walked up to him with my then 20-year-old, 6'1" daughter, who was an elite rower at Yale. So you have to imagine the moment. Here I am, 6'3", my daughter, fit, 20-year-old, and Vartan. I shook his hand. He looked at me and he said, "Nubar, is that your daughter?" And we were both towering over him. And he looked up. He said, "Is that your daughter?" I said, "Yes." And without missing a beat, he said, "Now that's evolution." And you have to understand that I'm a biologist by training, and he knew that I knew exactly what he meant. It's an honor to speak here today about my mentor, my hero, and the ultimate man of the world, Vartan Gregorian. For me, a fellow Armenian, he was a compass, an inspiration showing me what was possible for foreign-born Armenians and instructing me on my obligations to the past and to the future. Most people hold more than one identity, particularly those of us who are immigrants. We are called to translate and to navigate, finding our way across borders, both practical and intellectual. Throughout his life, Vartan added together an extraordinary number of experiences, languages, cultures, and ideas from his person and his perspective. Beyond being the sum of many things, Vartan's span of insights and experiences made him a unique multiplication of them. He was a scholar and also a CEO, a seeker of philanthropy and a philanthropic donor. He was an author, an activist, a humanitarian, a bibliophile, a father, a husband, a son, a friend, a role model. Throughout his life, Vartan multiplied kindness, compassion, wisdom, and commitment. He was also a man of words. I suspect every one of you in the audience can, even today, conjure up a piece of advice or a turn of phrase that he said or wrote that stayed with you. It is certainly true in my case. So today, I will try to pay homage in his own words. Vartan once said, "I realize that in each of us, the whole is more than the parts. The multiple legacies are not liabilities, they are assets. They provide one with a critical distance from ideological straitjackets and frozen orthodoxies." Vartan recognized that being a multiplication of things was a safeguard against narrow thinking. And throughout his life, Vartan took great responsibility for sharing his vast, wide-ranging knowledge. He said, "I realized that as a teacher, I had to provide my students with an intellectual compass for their travels from one culture to another, yet at the same time strengthen their knowledge of their own cultural legacies, to provide them a moral, cultural, and intellectual base." He was certainly a teacher to me. I had the profound honor of working closely with Vartan on an initiative we co-founded together with Ruben Vartanian, who's here today. The initiative was called the Aurora Humanitarian Prize and Initiative. Since 2015, we built a movement to honor the memory of those who saved Armenian lives more than a century ago during the Armenian genocide by finding, honoring, and supporting the work of modern-day heroes who do that work to save people today all around the world. We are joined here today by Lord Ara Darzi, who chairs the Aurora Selection Committee, succeeding Vartan in that special role. Selection Committee members Lema Gabawi, Ernesto Zedillo, John Pendergrass, Dele Olojedi are here, as well as Aurora Prize laureates Marguerite Barankitse, Tom Catena, and Julienne Losange from all over the world. What a thrill it has been to learn from him, to watch his special touch chairing the Selection Committee members, themselves former country presidents and Nobel Prize winners, some of them, as I mentioned here today, and to witness his special relationship with Armenia, which found a powerful outlet in the final years of his life. In speaking about recognizing the Armenian genocide, Vartan, as always, pushed the world to go further. He said, "People put too much emphasis on recognition. It's not recognition. It's not to allow it to happen again. That's what led me to Aurora." He went on to say, I'm very proud to join Aurora because its aim is to reconnect, its aim is to declare human solidarity, its aim is to witness, its aim is to also remember those good Samaritans who at the risk of their life, their fortunes, went to help people who they did not know. When Vartan spoke of the Aurora Initiative, he often recited a quote from Bertolt Brecht's Galileo, saying, "Curse the land that needs heroes." He reminded us that we should all work to ensure a world in which we would not need them. But he also knew that human nature often created conflict and inequities that could be best countered by knowledge and active, compassionate philanthropy. I've been so fortunate to have been able to bear witness alongside Vartan to the strength of humanity across the globe. Our motto at Aurora is gratitude in action. These words are a tribute to Vartan's lifelong legacy. He always insisted that saying you were grateful was not enough. Gratitude needed to be brought to life by deeds. He approached knowledge in the same way. Vartan was not content to simply have knowledge. He was driven to put knowledge to good use. The power that comes from knowledge when shared and applied was the power Vartan most carefully wielded for the good of mankind. One of the most memorable statements from Vartan was in response to being asked what he had done to become so powerful. He answered, "I've never been interested in power, but I am interested in knowledge. And it so happens that knowledge is power." And speaking of knowledge, we all know the special place books and educational institutions held in his heart. In a speech at the White House in 2002, he said, "Libraries and museums are the DNA of our culture. Cemeteries do not provide earthly immortality to men and women. Libraries, museums, universities, and schools do." I've traveled the world and I've met many people, but I've never met anyone who so clearly represented a new standard for extraordinary. We will sorely miss Vartan's immeasurable contributions to so many important projects, most notably the Aurora Humanitarian Initiative, which he founded. Like many of you, we are looking for ways to keep his spirit, wisdom, and drive forever alive. To that end, my family and a small group are working together to secure a part of Vartan's legacy for the future at Aurora through philanthropy. Given all that's happening in the world, we feel bound to follow in his footsteps. I will close with a reflection of Vartan as a child. Vartan's grandmother, as we've heard throughout today, was illiterate and never attended school. But like grandmothers the world over, she offered her grandchildren a sense of responsibility and wonder about the world. For diasporic cultures, it is so often the stories from our ancestors that bind us. Vartan wrote, "Since she could not read books to me and my sister, she spun tales. I learned that the stars were human souls living in the sky. These stars were our guardians. They not only protected us, but had us under constant watch to see what we did, that we did the right thing. They served as lamps to light our inner world, enabling us to see its richness. They were the seats of our conscience. During the summer nights, my sister and I slept on the roof, flanking our grandmother, and we watched the awe of the sky full of shining stars. The image of a star watching over and guiding us was how I experienced Vartan. For the many years I knew Vartan, I always felt he was looking over my shoulder, looking out for me, challenging me, guiding me, and I feel his spirit here today, watching all over all of us. Vartan was a guiding light, shining for those who knew him and for those he did not. We will always need Vartan looking over our shoulders, guiding us like the stars he looked up to as a child. As Armenians, the greatest strength of our diaspora is that of compassion, to spread hope to those who know and those who will never meet. And no one embodied that hope, that remarkable impact, that guiding light more forcefully than Vartan Gregorian. Thank you, Vartan.
Yes, Vartan was the very embodiment of hope. And although he's no longer with us, very unfortunately, Aurora continues the vitally important work of gratitude in action that he believed so much in and contributed so much to. This year we have a unique situation with co-founders and selection committee chair joining us from across the world, emphasizing the global nature of Aurora's reach and impact. It is my honor to welcome Nubar Afeyan, co-founder of Aurora Humanitarian Initiative, and Ruben Vardanyan, co-founder of Aurora Humanitarian Initiative, and Lord Aradarzi, chair of the Aurora Prize Selection Committee. Thank you for joining us today. Dr. Afeyan, Nubar, I would like to ask you to start and to give an overview of Aurora's global impact.
Hello, dear. I'm sorry for not physically being in Yerevan on this special occasion, but I am quite thankful for the modern technology that allows us to be together virtually. And of course, coming together to help those who are doing good in the world, uniting through our actions, no matter how far away we may be from each other, forms the very base of the Aurora movement. A century ago, Armenians were struggling to survive and overcome their despair, with many benefiting from the generosity of others and settling into their adoptive countries. As co-founders, our main goal in establishing the Aurora Humanitarian Initiative were to honor the memory of the victims of the Armenian genocide, something the whole world does each year on this date, April 24, but also to remember the survivors of the Armenian genocide, and most importantly, to show gratitude to their saviors, the people whose bravery in the face of such adversity and danger helped save lives and allowed many of us to be here together today. To honor those who saved lives of Armenians a century ago, we launched Aurora to find modern-day heroes who are doing the same today, and in so doing, bring the world's attention to them and their work. With the motto, Gratitude in Action, within a short 7 years, Aurora has evolved into a global movement. Unfortunately, the atrocities that drive people to seek safety from persecution have not abated. Today, with ongoing wars, genocides, refugee crises, a pandemic, plague, and human rights violations throughout the globe, the whole world needs to step up and step in. Apathy and indifference are the dry tinder allowing the fires of oppression and injustice to spread just like they did a century ago. The Aurora Initiative has joined the ranks of other global humanitarian movements to become one of the leading voices for the most vulnerable. Please take a look at the accompanying slides to learn more about Aurora's impact. Our flagship program, the Aurora Prize for Awakening Humanity, is a global humanitarian award that recognizes and supports those who put themselves at risk to save others. The Aurora Prize monetary award is $1 million US. Every year, the laureate receives a unique opportunity to continue the cycle of giving by supporting 3 organizations that help people in need. Since its launch, the Aurora Prize has changed the lives of almost 1.1 million people affected by war, conflict, displacement, persecution, and other humanitarian issues. The program has supported or launched 46 projects implemented by 25 laureate designated organizations in 20 countries and territories. The Aurora Prize funds benefits mostly children, people displaced by conflict and genocide, and women and girls, with 3 key spheres being education, healthcare, and empowerment. Almost 90% of its projects provide lifelong benefits to people in need, while impact of 28% of projects will span across generations. Overall, the Aurora Humanitarian Initiative has benefited over 2.7 million people worldwide. Aurora programs span more than 50 countries and territories and include over 200 projects. We are very grateful to our donors and supporters who've made this possible, and we hope to achieve even more with your help. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nubar. It's true, Aurora has become one of the most important humanitarian actors on the global scene, but it also remains very closely connected to its Armenian roots. Mr. Vardanyan, Ruben, since you are joining us from Artsakh now, I would like to ask you to tell more about Aurora's Artsakh program and its impact.
Badevdes Bolorin.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Arman. I'll speak English from Stepanakert. I'm very glad to be here.
Thank you for this opportunity to speak about Aurora initiative from Artsakh, from Stepanakert. I think it's very important for all symbols what we are talking about, keeping the Aurora Humanitarian movement global, international, at the same time keep its Armenian roots, which was established in 2015 in commemoration of 100 years of Armenian genocide. And I think it's very important what we are Armenians who survived during the genocide 107 years ago, not only always remember, but also bring the example of something which we believe is very important for the world. At the same time, I think it's very critical for Aurora to be engaged and involved in Armenian world also. And unfortunately, in 2020 was a very difficult year for Armenians around the world, especially in Artsakh. We are coming back after big war, and from the first day after war was stopped, Aurora Humanitarian Initiative decided to become engaged and support many projects which been implemented in Artsakh immediately after the war was stopped. I want to say thank you for all the donors and supporters, and also the team of the people who work in Artsakh. And I thought it was very critical to present what we did in the last 2 years, because it's showing also what we've been engaged, not only in our own project, but the project which was implemented by many of our partners. We got 65 local and international partners. We implemented 70 projects already, and 21 ongoing and confirmed for funding. We got $2.2 million overall commitment, from which I'm very proud to say it was very important symbolically also. But the last year, the laureate, Jamila Afghani, decided to put $250,000 to Artsakh support projects. And this is was important to keep the connections between the connectivity between the laureates and global movement with Armenia and what's happening in Artsakh. Most of our laureates been in Artsakh, and they saw themselves what's happening in Artsakh. And I think it's very important to keep our global initiative with the connectivity with what's happening in our Armenian world. I'm very thankful for opportunity to speak from Artsakh, where people, despite all the difficulties, believe their future, believe what they can continue build their own life, the way what they believe is right for them. And I want to say we are Armenians around the globe needs to make everything possible that our Artsakh will stay Armenian, and the people needs to feel that Artsakh is not only important for Armenians, but for also other nations. And I believe only together we can make this happen. So I want to say again, thank you, and emphasize the importance of the Artsakh for all of us, and say we are together with you, Artsakh. We will do everything possible with Artsakh to stay in peace, with life will be recovered, and we'll get more projects implemented in Artsakh together with many of our partners. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ruben. It's true that Aurora's work in Artsakh proves the success of our initiative, both on the local and international level. And now, the moment we have all been waiting for, Lord Arazar Darzi, Chair of the Aurora Prize Selection Committee, we ask you to announce the names of the 2021 Aurora Humanitarians. I'm sorry,
Thank you,
2022 Aurora Humanitarians.
Thank you, Arman. Let me first of all start by thanking Nubar and Ruben for creating this amazing initiative with Vartan when the world needs it the most. I know that many of us feel overwhelmed by the seemingly endless tide of human sorrow and suffering we face at the moment. But the Aurora Humanitarians remain the beacons of compassion, guiding and inspiring humanity. It is an honor for me to be part of this initiative that recognizes and supports them. The impact Aurora has managed to achieve is beyond impressive, as we will see later on today. Aurora honors three modern-day heroes today for giving access to education to girls and women in Afghanistan, bringing solace to grieving families in Yemen, and defending human rights in Egypt. And here they are. Jamila Afghani from Afghanistan, an educator and human rights defender who was named in 2017 as Aurora's Humanitarian for empowering the girls and women of Afghanistan. As founder of the Noor Educational and Capacity Development Organization, NECDO, she has dedicated over 25 years of her life to making sure that women of Afghanistan have access to education and clear sense of their rights. Just when it seemed that the tide of patriarchal oppression was finally about to turn, the Taliban took over her country and Jamila Afghani was forced to flee her homeland. But she hasn't given up on its people. Hadi Juman from Yemen, a peace activist, mediator, and body collector from Yemen who regularly risks his life to facilitate the exchange of prisoners of war and recover human remains from the front lines. As the country continues to experience a prolonged political and humanitarian crisis caused by the civil war, Mr. Juman acts as a mediator between both sides of the conflict to help the local population deal with communication disruption, power shortages, and acute need for humanitarian aid. And finally, Mahinor Al-Masri from Egypt, a lawyer and political activist from Egypt who promotes political freedoms and human rights in the country by organizing peaceful protests and defending political prisoners in courts. In Egypt, voicing disagreement with the official policy can be dangerous, and Mahinor Al-Masri has been detained and put in jail several times for her activism. Nevertheless, she remains optimistic about the future of her country and committed to being an agent of positive change. On behalf of the Aurora Prize Selection Committee, a huge congratulations to these remarkable individuals. Thank you, and I'll hand back to Armin.
Thank you, Lord Darzi. And I welcome our co-founders to join and congratulate the finalists of 2022.
Congratulations. We're very happy to see new names.
And now, I believe my colleague Zoe Barsegyan will take the questions from all of you. Thank you. Հարցերը կարող եք ուղղել եւ հայերեն եւ անգլերեն.
As I promised, we move to Q&A format now. Please, the floor is open for asking questions. 168 AM, please. Valery Vidlanyan, 168 AM. I have questions addressed to every keynote. The first question is addressed to Mr. Vartanyan and Mr. Afeyan. The day is symbolic, so is the award ceremony, and in this context I would like you to reflect on Armenian-Turkish relations and the new agenda thereof, which is what the authorities speak about. They mention we're talking about format without prerequisites, but high-ranking Turkish officials still continue to speak about prerequisites on various occasions. We learned today that on the 107th anniversary protest action in Uruguay Armenian community, during this event, the Turkish Prime Minister made the grey wolf's gesture welcoming our compatriots. So could you reflect on the following, on as to how realistic is the new Armenian-Turkish agenda and the regional peace in the background of Azeri aggression? What is the alternative to peace? I would like to ask Mr. Vartanyan to speak about the hypothetical opening of the Armenian-Turkish border, whether Armenia will be ready to defend its economy, not to experience the similar failed experience of Georgia, where many Georgian cities are hostage to Turkish capital. And the next question is addressed to Mr. Darzi.
Please, Nobari.
Okay,
I
if
have
you
a
can
quick
hear
question.
me.
Yeah.
You're asking a very appropriate question. April 24th is both a historic date for us, but it also has to be a forward-looking date. And we are, in fact, in the unusual circumstance where, for the first time, we have ongoing dialogue about the past as well as the future with our neighbors and sometimes our existential threats that come from Turkey. And I think, as a diasporan Armenian, I've lived my whole life outside of our historic lands, although in the last 20 years, I have been in Armenia some 100 times across the various projects. I think it's important to keep in mind that any decision that's made today as it relates to peace and agreements with Turkey have to provide accountability to 4 different constituents, and these may surprise you. One of them is our ancestors who lost their lives and through a historic injustice. And we have to ask ourselves, what would they have wanted us to do in 2022 to be respectful of the sacrifice they made? The second are newborn children of Armenians today, who 20 years from now will inherit as adults the land that we leave for them. And we need to think, what would they want us to do today on their behalf? Because they will be the inheritors of our decisions. Of course, the third are Armenians throughout Armenia and Artsakh who are impacted by these decisions. And the fourth are the present-day diasporan Armenians. And it's a difficult task to integrate all of those different constituencies and points of view. But I would say that it's extremely important for a nation that goes back thousands of years that its leaders do this. Because any decision that is convenient and prioritizes only one of the constituencies will create in the long term difficulties. So my advice to anyone involved in this activity is to balance the historic, the future, the diasporan, and the Armenia-based responsibilities we have in trying to achieve what we all want, which is long-term peace and stability in the region, but doing so out of principles and out of accountability, not out of present-day convenience.
I fully agree with Nubar. I don't want to go the same argument, but I want to add a couple important points, which I believe is also crucial for this type of negotiation. We all remember very well, and its current history also shows many times, all of us, but any peace which was signed without really big substance, without power, you cannot be sure will be keep the peace in the region or keep the peace between the countries. That's why whatever we will sign, whatever will be signed between the Armenian government and Turkish government, we always need to remember we need to become strong. But this will be staying in a agreement which we both sides will execute and stay in this agreement. That's why, in my view, we will not become strong. It will not be strong in our economy, in our government, state building. We are not strong in building the Spurk-Armenia relationship. We cannot be sure, but whatever will be signed will be kept in the long term from our neighbor side. That's why, number one, adding what Nubar said, the categories, I would say, without building strong Armenia, and strong Armenia cannot be built without diaspora and Armenia jointly building this. I don't believe any agreement will be worth it to sign. The second, I think it's very important for anyone who sign any agreement from the state point of view, understand what we have an issue of the state, but issue also nation. And in this case, engaging in discussion, engaging on finding the right balance, which Nubar mentioned. It's a very critical element which needs to be organized. Doesn't matter what the legitimacy you allowed you to sign any agreement without this type of the consensus discussion, without bringing this question in a serious, deep conversation with the diaspora, with the Armenians, with our people in Artsakh, it would not be possible to get the right to sign any agreement. Doesn't matter how legally you have a right. It's not only legal, but also moral right to sign this type of agreement. And the third element, I would say, it's very also critical for everything what we're talking about, Armenian-Turkey relationship. It's not only how we can defend our territory, how we defend our economy, but also how we want to go ahead, how we want to use this for our advantage. It needs to be a serious working group about how we want to change our legislation, which industries can be competitive, how we'll operate in a Western Armenian land. Do we want to rebuild our Armenian heritage in this region or not? Do we want to make the Armenian again be living there or not? I think it's a very serious issue because it's not only open the order, it's a question how we will go back in territories which was been historically Armenian, not anymore Armenians live there, and we lost all our culture, historical heritage, and what will be our strategy from point of really having peace with your neighbor, at the same time showing that not only we can defend our economy, but also we want to become, position ourselves differently in this region, saying we remember, we care, and we want to build our future with the way what was always our dream to rebuild Armenian presence in the Western Armenia.
The next question is addressed to Lord Darzi. We in Armenia are aware of your hefty investment and contribution to the United Kingdom's and global, why not, health systems. You certainly in the UK are quite reputable and renowned and respected person. In this respect, we would like to speak about the non-recognition by Great Britain of the Armenian genocide. Have you taken any steps vis-à-vis the authorities of Great Britain to guide or prompt them? Will we be witnessing the recognition and condemnation by Great Britain of the Armenian genocide? Thank you.
I'll be good if I could get a brief translation of this question from this wonderful lady, Arman.
Yeah, sure. And the translation is also available on the English channel. So the question from our colleague is saying, Lord Darzi, you are one of the most respected members of the British Parliament, House of Lords. You are one of the most respected representatives of the healthcare system of the United Kingdom, and not only in the United Kingdom but globally, and in her opinion have power to influence opinions. In this regard, the question is, as you know, the British government and the British Parliament have not yet recognized the Armenian genocide. What do you do in this regard for advising your colleagues to recognize the Armenian genocide?
Thank you, Armen. Let me start by saying, since my early childhood living in a country which was Iraq, which subsequent to that I left that country for all sorts of reasons. And as you said, I've ended up in Britain, and I, for whatever reason, ended up in the House of Lords. That's been something that has been on the back of our mind for many, many years since my arrival to the United Kingdom. And the sad fact is, it's taken 109 years for us to even engage parliamentarians in the issue of Britain recognizing the Armenian genocide. And we also know, with leaks memos recently, you may have come across these, that in actual fact the government did confidentially agree that it was a genocide, but decided for political reasons not to declare or make that publicly. And that, which includes me and a number of other parliamentarians, both in the House of Commons and House of Lords, have raised this in successive governments in terms of bringing a motion to Parliament. Recognizing what's happened in the past is not something that humanity should be shy of, because at the end of the day, we're trying to learn what happens from speeches to crimes to genocide, and it's clear how hate travels. And the sad fact is, in the last 109 years, we've seen that process happens in different countries. As we speak, currently in the world, there is at least 2 or 3 descriptions of genocide. And if we don't acknowledge these facts, the sad fact is we repeat. The irrational behavior of humans will repeat doing that. So with hope, we still believe we can get something through Parliament. Privately, I've heard many supporting that the United Kingdom should recognize the genocide, but it just takes the moment to achieve that magic moment of getting a bill through Parliament. But I could also say His Excellency, the Armenian ambassador in the United Kingdom, has been actively involved in this. And also, just to make the strong point that there are many parliamentarians who have nothing to do with Armenia or an Armenian background, strongly believe this should happen. And I hope this will happen, certainly in my lifetime.
Second Armenian channel, Armenian second TV channel, Armen Havakiman. The question is addressed to Mr. Afeyan. Mr. Afeyan, we've had communicated with you within the framework of Aurora, but you're not only a co-founder of Aurora, but also Moderna. I would like to ask about another calamity that befell upon mankind, COVID. The numbers have gotten down both globally as well as in our country, in Armenia. Can we consider that it's been overcome, or should we expect a new wave? What's your take on this? Thank you.
Well, what we've learned in the last 2 years is that experts are not experts. And everything that has been predicted has been somewhat contradicted by what the virus does. And so my suggestion is that we need to stay vigilant. We need to expect additional threats by either the multiple variants of Omicron. Now we're up to BA5. 1 and 2 are quite rampant. 3, 4, and 5 are beginning to show up. Or a completely different strain could be emerging from anywhere in the world. And I say that not because we have a vaccine that we're constantly improving to try to counteract the virus, but because we don't control what the virus does. And so I would say it's very important to stay vigilant, to stay in a defensive posture, and carefully go about our lives with attention to the fact that we may need to add protection, whether it's through masks or additional vaccines or other means, isolation, if the conditions are requiring it. So it's always difficult because everybody wants to hear the end of the war, but it is a war, but unfortunately the other side isn't reading social media and isn't following our pronouncements, and therefore I think it's safe to be in this mode of staying vigilant and over a period of time, seeing if many months or a year or 2 pass without major additional flares, then we could begin to think of it differently, but I think it's premature.
այլ հարցեր։
Other questions? I do not see everyone clearly. Armen Press Agency, Ani?
Ցես պարոն Ռուբեն Վարդանյանին է ուղված։ Պարոն Վարդանյան, ինձ հետաքրքիր է
I'm interested in what's been done within the framework of the initiative The Future Armenian.
Launched this project in April of last year, and we engaged more than 100,000 people in this project. We believe it's critical for Armenians around the world and in people who live in Armenia and Artsakh. Recognize what only asset what we have is human resources, the people, the talented people. And if you really want to make the changes of our future, we need to do everything possible to engage Armenians around the world to the present, our life. And we organized a lot of discussions. We issued a paper which we believe represent my vision about the future of Armenia, but it's mainly based by hours of discussion with Nubar and other my partners. And we believe the issue that we are facing is not only the legitimate political leaders, but also leaders who represent Armenian nations around the world needs to come together and talk about the challenges that we are facing, the opportunities that we are facing, and really try to find a solution which will be acceptable for all the groups which Nubar mentioned in his previous answer the previous question. The Future Armenia is a CEO, Arta Kapitanyan, and we are working in a concept of General Assembly, which will be organized in autumn of this year, we hope, and we also looking the directions to think about some specific projects which will need to be implemented in Armenia and outside of Armenia, because when we are talking about future of Armenian, it's not only issues in Armenia, it's issues in Artsakh, but also in issues in Spurk, in the diaspora. That's why we believe it needs to be the way we need to combine our vision about our future, not only about Armenia, but Armenian world together. That's why it's a challenging, difficult movement which we start, because it's difficult because we are learning to work together collegially. I highly appreciate our other colleagues, not only Nubar and me, but David Tawajan, Artur Averjan, Aram Barchan, Richard Azanya for their input and willingness to be part of this initiative and try to find a common ground for going forward.
No more questions. I thank the speakers and hand the floor to Armand Gilavian for conclusion.
Alex, thank you, Zoya. Dear co-founders, dear chair, thank you very much. And most importantly, congratulations again to the 2022 Aurora Humanitarians. Your work makes the world a better place, and we salute you for that. Dear guests, in the next room of Madanadaran, near this hall, we have displayed the Chronicles of Aurora, a unique 21st century manuscript containing the depictions of the Aurora Humanitarian Initiative activities, featuring the stories of the Aurora Humanitarians and laureates, and reflecting the Aurora Prize and its impact. The names of the 2022 Aurora Humanitarians are already inscribed in the tome, and later this year, the name of the 2022 Aurora Prize laureate will be added to the manuscript as well. Please take a closer look at this one-of-a-kind masterpiece. You have seen the impact of Aurora, but the work of Aurora goes on. Please continue sharing the vision of Aurora and continue supporting the Aurora Humanitarian Initiative. Thank you. Dear founders, dear chair, thanks so much. We finalize this meeting.
Thank you, Armand. What I want to say from my side, I want to say big thanks for entire team who are doing a fantastic job doing this project in many countries and really being fully engaged, and I think it's a great example how Armenians who live in Armenia, non-Armenian people who work on this project together, doing something very important for the world. Thank you again, Arman, and all of your members of your team.
Thank you, and have a good day, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.